Hey everybody, welcome back. The Bad Pennies are back. I am Sho, and this is my friend Alan.
And we are here to talk about romance. We didn't even practice that. That was pretty good.
Let's talk about romance, Alan.
Yeah, let's talk about
Let's talk about a man's role in romance.
Well,
what
okay,
women
so-
expect, and
Yeah,
no,
they do though. They do expect romance.
wow, they do.
They
Yeah.
do, and why wouldn't they? I mean, I can't even think of a reason why they would. Why if I was a woman, why I wouldn't expect romance. So, and I say this, again because you know that I've worked with a lot of women over the years, and they tell me things. They do. They tell me a lot of things, and they tell me things that the beauty of it is that it reveals something about themselves and an insight into who they are and how amazing they are. By the way, women are absolutely amazing and bring things to the world that we would never even think of or even be capable of bringing, right?
So
in addition to children, right? Now, we're not talking about being mothers and having kids, but
it sounds to me like you're trying to romance people right now.
well, maybe in a way I am. So, and of course we said the simultaneously we said romance,
Nah.
and so everybody went, "Oh, romance,
Romance.
all right." So, look. So what we'll do is we'll read the definitions. And
In the Dictionary for Men, which we haven't seen in a few episodes.
yeah, well, we haven't used it for a bit, and one of them, I think the battery died. But so that was. But I didn't tell anybody that. But it's fully charged up right now, so we're good.
So romance.
So romance. Okay, the definition of romance: a quality or feeling of mystery, anticipation, and excitement associated with love, courtship, or wooing someone. Ooh,
okay.
All right. Also, a second definition, not quite this totally applying to what we're talking about, but a little bit. Second definition is to seek the attention or patronage of someone, especially by use of flattery.
Okay.
All right, but I like the first one better. And then the second definition is about being romantic. And then we're going to talk about men and romance and men being romantic. So the first definition, romantic, marked by or associated with expressions of love, deep interest, or affection conducive to or suitable for lovemaking. Men out there are all kinds of images are going through their heads right now. The second definition, relating to arts, music, and literature that deals with the beauty of nature and human emotions, particularly the late 18th and early 19th centuries, which was called the Romantic period.
Okay.
So people fashionably, it's called the Romantic period because it was very fashionable to be concerned with things that involve art and literature.
But we're not going there. We're talking about
beauty and nature. But
we need to talk about men being in a romantic
marked
kind
by
of
or associated with expressions of love, deep interest, or affection conducive or suitable to lovemaking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So
being romantic.
For some reason, most women love romance.
They expect it.
Well, they love it so much that they want it from you. And in that dynamic, they do expect it. They expect us to be romantic. And it's a good thing because when we're romantic, it causes them to fantasize. It causes them to feel good about themselves. And in our benefit, when that happens, when we're bringing our best romantic selves, right? We may get something we like too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to tell you what it is? Probably not. But you know what it is. and so,
but
without
for
me
men,
getting bleeped in 2 podcasts in a row,
right. So for men, Is this something that comes naturally, or something that has to be taught or learned how to do it?
Yes. And yes.
Yes and yes.
I think that because of one of the things that we desire from women, okay, that there is, whether it's genetic or not, I don't know. I don't think that human beings are particularly instinctual, animals are, but the way our brains have developed, we don't really need instinct to be able to survive, because we teach each other, right? We teach each other either directly, culturally, or by example. Raising children, the parents teach the children. They teach them about roles and about relationships, and they teach them the tools that they need to be able to survive, to be able to select a mate, to be able to pass on their genetic information. It's to keep the species alive. But again, humans are more than that, right?
Yes.
And if you look at the courtship of animals, there's all kinds of very specific things that they do, to get the female's attention.
Okay.
And so women want you to get their attention. Now they want to get your attention too, because then they dress and they put on makeup and they do fashionable things, and that, from a historical standpoint, that goes back, longer than we have any kind of record and information. But women have always done this to attract men, and she wants to attract the best man she can.
Okay.
All right, that's her job.
So we're talking about things like buying flowers and chocolates, writing her a love sonnet.
Yeah.
I mean, is that the stuff we're talking about when we're talking about being romantic?
No, that is exactly the stuff we're talking about, although that might be a little over the top in our culture these days, right? Because, the cultures have shifted. I mean, there would be a time where if a man showed up courting a woman without, some kind of gift or something, that she probably wouldn't even, go out the door.
Okay.
Right? Or go sit on the porch or whatever they used to do, right? They would sit on a swing,
right?
And the father or mother would be watching them from the corner of the window just to make sure that there wasn't any hanky-panky going on, right? So, but they were able to get to know each other, and in those delicate conversations, certain things start to happen that are important. And we're not talking about from a sex standpoint, okay? I mean, look, sex, important, children, species survives, right? Okay? So
biology.
Biology, just basic biology, passing on your genetic information. Men have genetic information. Women have genetic information. There's a whole nother level of that one too, but the combined, they produce children, and humans survive. And also, that we give them and teach them so that they can grow up and not do stupid stuff. So let's get back to romance.
Yeah.
So romance was developed by men to woo the woman.
Okay? Roses are red, violets are blue.
Exactly. And again, in different cultures and different times, what was considered romantic or romance has changed. Today you might take her out to dinner, you might take her out to a movie, you might take her. I like to take them bowling.
That's romantic.
It's.
I mean, it's spending time together.
Yes, exactly. So here's the thing: you can do all kinds of things at the bowling alley. You can, you can still have food, right?
Okay.
You can, but you can talk, right? If you go to a movie, you can't talk.
Okay.
And more importantly,
you don't see each other.
You can't listen and she talks.
Yeah.
That's what really has to happen.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that she talks and you listen.
Mm.
But
But it's a time thing.
Because,
is what
by
we're
the way,
talking
you talk too much and it's not romantic to them.
about. Right. You're giving her attention at the bowling alley.
Yes, you're able to give her attention,
Right.
and you're actually able to show her that you have control of your ego and that you're not going to compete with her.
Okay.
Because if you
So you're saying let her win?
No, I just say don't make it a deal. Don't make it a competition.
Okay.
You just bowl the way you bowl.
Okay.
Right? You win, you lose, it doesn't matter because what you're going to get to do is you're going to get to champion her.
Okay.
And by the way, when a man champions a woman, it's very romantic to women. For a lot of women, and some women out there are going like, no, I know.
Yeah.
All right. So look, if this hits for you, fine. If it doesn't hit for you, it's something else. But knowing what it is a good thing, right?
Okay. Flowers.
Because you're going to, for
chocolates.
you women, that you're going to be looking for a man that just naturally does that. You don't want a man.
But what man naturally does that? There's no. I don't. Hey.
Does
no.
what? Flowers and candy.
Flowers and candy and all
Not
that.
anymore.
You do that because you know you have to, because you know somebody told you. I'm talking to men for a second.
I don't.
Somebody told you somewhere younger in life, and this is something that you have to do to get a woman.
I don't. And I don't think that women would. I mean, I think it would be almost offensive to them if you started piling on all that stuff. I mean, you start piling on gifts. Sure, she'll take them,
But it's not
she
romance.
won't respect you, right? Because it depends. It depends on.
Well, I mean,
on what stage of the relationship. So
Right,
let's talk
right.
about the beginning stage, because that's
well,
what
yeah,
I'm talking
romance
about.
is important in the beginning, but it's also important
It never
20,
stops.
30 years later.
It's more important 20 or 30 years later. It's
Okay.
more important. It's not less important.
Right.
It's more important. Because if you let the romance go out of the marriage, then the marriage dies.
If
Okay,
you say
remember
that
the
one,
la-
say that
see
one
the
again.
last
say that one again.
podcast again. Yes.
Yeah.
If you let the romance go out of the marriage dies. The relationship dies. It withers. And all along, the what you are there to do is deepen the bond, deepen the marriage, deepen the connection, deepen the intimacy. Right? That's the job. That's the job. And if you're not doing the things that cause that to happen, then you're not doing the job. And that's the man and the woman. But right now, what we're saying is women aren't the ones that need to be romantic. They're the ones that love romance.
Men don't need romance. They
No.
just need to know how to give it.
That's exactly the truth.
And it's something for women to receive that men don't expect to be reciprocated.
That's correct.
That's very true.
That is
okay.
totally true.
Okay.
All right?
That's fair. I mean,
And so
if my
you-
wife bought me flowers, I wouldn't.
You've got to be man enough to romance her, and she has to be woman enough to receive it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
That'll probably be a bunch of thumbs up, thumbs down things. So, but yes, you have to be man enough to romance her, and she has to be woman enough to receive your romance. And look, if the romance that he's presenting doesn't work for you, then you know he's not the right man for the women out there, right? And for the man, if you're having to do things that you don't like doing, she's not the right woman either. She's kind of like pushing you or molding you into doing things that you wouldn't naturally do. Then, and we're not talking about how women make men, better men. That happens through commitment. But we're talking about the romance part of it. You're having to do things that are uncomfortable for you. She's not the right woman. You should be doing the romance should be something that is showing up at your best, right?
Okay.
Now, there's a time not to show up at your best, but that's a different podcast for both the man and the woman. There's a time where you have to actually show a little of the ugly stuff so that the other person knows what they're getting into. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about romance.
Romance.
I know. That threw you for a loop, right? Everybody
Yeah.
else, I was going, what would that be, and how would that look?
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's another podcast. So, but for romance, you're doing things that make her feel good about who she is.
You're showing your appreciation.
Well, no, yes and no. It's just the things, those things that you bring. That look. I know from the things, some of the way. I don't give too much of this away, right? But I know that for a lot of the women over the years have told me that just the way you live is romantic to them sometimes. Because the fact that you're interested in them and you're the kind of man that they're interested in, makes them feel good. And so it doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything, right? But again, if you force it, it turns them off. I've just had a man that recently who was really forcing it with a whole bunch of different women, and they were all coming to me telling me like, what's up with him, you know? And like, well, you know, he wants to be in a relationship. And they're like, yeah, but you know, damn, you know,
Yes.
it's like, tell him to turn it down a few notches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't seem too eager.
Right.
Romance is it's like for us men, it's a fine art. So you wanna take your romantic abilities and take it to a fine art. You don't want to, you know, on a first date, you know. Well, I suppose at a certain level of status, a first date might be flying her to Paris in your private jet, right? Because there are certain women that would be a normal first date. But for all of the rest of us, and so I've now covered everyone in the 1%, right? For the 99% of the rest of us, it may be just taking her to dinner or something simple. And the reason that I said take her bowling was that we can get to know each other, and I get to show her that I am not going to compete with her.
Okay.
All right. Now there is one other thing that an ex told me once, was that she liked about bowling. She liked men to taking her bowling too, by the way. She wasn't a big bowler, but she liked the format. And she said that it was a great way to check out their backside without leering. All right. So you get to check each other out.
And she gets to display herself as well.
She does.
Okay.
You get to check each other out because they're out there on the lane, and you're just, you know, doing one of those, you know, hey, oh yeah, all right, those kind of things. But that's not particularly romantic, but it's just a bonus. But again, you just doing, it's often little things. Same thing, you know, when it does become a long-term committed, or if it does, a long-term committed relationship, it's not the big overtures that matter. It's all the little stuff that you constantly do. Because they don't, you know, there was a thing on the internet that was called the point system. Most of you might actually be familiar with the point system, that women will reward us with points when we do something good, right? Especially romantic. But the thing is that you only get 1 point. And it doesn't matter how big it is or how small it is, you still only get 1 point. And
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yep, look it up. Look it up, the point system. But the thing is that you're not there to rack up points,
okay,
right? You're not there to rack up points. That's not the purpose. You're there to show her that you can not only be romantic, but that you will keep it up for a lifetime with a woman that you love and care about. And that's a breakdown, because one of the biggest complaints that I got from women over the years was that their men stopped being romantic.
Complacency.
Well, yeah, for whatever reason. But here's the thing. What they expressed is that they felt like he didn't love them anymore, or that they weren't worth spending the energy to be romantic.
And that's where sometimes I think about the efforts that are involved in telling your wife you love her, or telling your woman that you're interested in her also. But
better to show her, but yeah, you can tell her.
What I mean is that there are actions that speak louder than words.
Right.
And a lot of that is what you're doing when you're doing these romantic things, is you're giving her the action that says, I love you.
Yes.
You know,
yes,
it could be
but
like,
in the beginning, there's no love. I mean, it's just your ability to exactly. But see, what you're showing her is who you're going to be, because whatever you show her, if it becomes a long-term committed relationship,
you have to keep doing it.
You have to keep doing it the rest of your marriage.
You have to keep doing it
forever, literally forever. So you might want to think about how big of a romantic you want to be in the beginning, because if you get married to that woman, that's how big you have to be the rest of your life. So maybe you might want to, or as the women said, turn it down a couple of notches, right? Yeah. But not so down so much that that it's not registering on the scale. So, but again, it's thoughtfulness is romantic to women. They've given me these long lists of things that men do that most men don't even. They think of in terms of flour and candy, but these days, not for all women, but I've actually been in. Even my ex-wife wasn't really big on that stuff because she felt that it was, especially like on Valentine's Day and stuff like that, that it was just obligatory. So I used to do romantic things for her when she came home, because she would come home from work. I'm going to tell a personal story here. And she would have a hard day at the job she was in. She was in a pretty high level position and had a lot of stress, and she did it brilliantly. But she would come home and just be like, she'd be like really stressed out, right? And she'd walk in the door and everything was wrong. Just everything was wrong. And it took a while. I had trying to figure out what it is that she was really. By the way, I watched the Don't Argue or What to Do When Your Woman Wants to Argue podcast. So, but I didn't go there with her. But I was baffled. I was really baffled as to what I could do, what was going on. And so, again, listening to them is romantic. Shall we say that again? Listening is romantic.
Well, you didn't say it the same way the second time.
Right.
But yeah, listening to them is romantic.
It is. And so, for many women. Okay. I wouldn't say all of them, but I would say most of them, because it shows you care.
But not only listening, take notes.
Well, and there we're back to my story. So I just started listening to her very carefully.
Okay.
What I realized is that she was hungry, because as soon as she would get something to eat, she'd be just fine. Everything would be good, right? And so I had food waiting for her every day when I was home. I mean, when my job took me away, I couldn't do that. But I would even set things up because I'm an ex-chef, so I had some cooking skills. And she loved my food, and I think it's one of the reasons that we got married. But I would leave things so she could easily, when she came home, get herself something to eat right away. All right.
Right.
But when I was there, I would have food. I would have a nice little table set just for her, and it wouldn't even. I wouldn't be eating. Sometimes I would sit with her, and sometimes I wouldn't, based on where she was at. Paying attention to what she needed, because sometimes she just wanted to be alone, but she was still hungry. And so I would give her all the space in the world, but I would set up this nice little, early dinner or whatever, or a snack, or have something. I would make something really nice for her every day that I was there. And that's romantic, right? And even sometimes, when she doesn't want you there, she wants her space. When you give her the space and you don't make it a big deal, it comes across as loving and caring.
Okay.
Which is romantic to women. When you're being loving and caring.
Yeah.
Being generous. And I don't mean generous with flowers and candy, again, back to that old deal, with yourself. Being generous with yourself. When you spend the time, you don't have to spend a lot of time with them to have a good relationship. Even in marriage, time is a fallacy that we have to spend a lot of time. Here's another one that's going to be like ups, downs. But I don't think that a lot of time has to be spent if the time you do spend is of super high quality. You're fully present and you're taking care of each other.
Okay.
And the way you take care of her can be perceived as romantic. Remember, she perceives the things you do and and how you care about her. She's looking at that, and she's, and when you don't do things to take care of her, then she goes to the place of thinking that you don't care, that she's not important. And like I said, it doesn't have to be the big ticket items, right? I had a friend that bought his wife a Land Cruiser, and she was happy for a day, but
did she ask for it?
But she wasn't any happy. Yes, she did. Oh, but she wasn't any happier than when he would bring her a single rose,
right?
Or write her a card or a letter or things like that he used to do. So it didn't. I'm not saying that it was wrong or she's being wrong. What I'm saying is that the big ticket items don't produce. See, for us men, we think that if we spend a lot of money, we should get a big bang for our buck, right?
And that was, pun intended, bang.
Yeah.
For her
well,
buck.
Again, we're mostly a family channel here, so but it's sure you can do the big things, but they won't mean really much more than all of the little stuff that you do all the time.
Right.
In fact, ultimately, they may actually mean more. And so, again, marked by romantic expressions of love, deep interest, or affection. And if you do a good job, she will want to reciprocate.
Okay.
In ways that she feels appropriate. And so be generous with being romantic.
Okay.
Right. And in fact, even being generous itself is a way of being romantic. Being generous with your time, or being generous with yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's good in the beginning of a relationship to identify for you to be able to identify with her on the things that she responds to, mm-hmm. and she has to be able to recognize the efforts that you're making as you actually trying to be romantic.
And look, if we were talking about the courting, I guess this is an element of courting, right? In fact, the romance associated with courtship, wooing someone, right?
Right.
So there's an element of this that's part of that. She's looking to see. Well, okay. I'm putting words in their mouths here, but a lot of women have told me that what they're looking in that period is to see if they like it. The kind of romance or romantic behavior that you express works for them,
right,
or not. Because if it doesn't, if they look, for you women, if you marry a man who's you already know the way that he expresses romance doesn't work for you, and you marry him anyway,
that's your fault.
You don't get the right to complain about him years later when he's still not doing what you think that he should be doing, right? So don't make that mistake. That's just a terrible mistake. Gamble with your life. And I'm, being a huge proponent of relationships that are conflict-free. Right? Who wants to go through life with a partner that you're always in conflict with?
Yeah.
That's just an awful way to spend your life. So, so these things, a lot of what we do in this podcast for men is to help them be who they need to be in order to be the good partner that is needed for that to actually take place. Because even if the woman doesn't want conflict and the man does, it's not gonna, you men can actually contribute a lot to destroying a relationship. So, in fact, I find men being at the source of a lot of them. I wouldn't say most, but it could be most.
Yeah.
It could potentially be most.
I think, we talked once before, episodes ago about the love languages, right? I think
a little bit. You talked more about it.
Yeah, that's kind of my wheelhouse a little bit, right? But to be able to recognize what she receives as love, and also be able to recognize what it is that you do as love.
And that's
really
a compatibility. That what we're talking about.
Yeah,
there
compatibility.
is
Exactly,
something that I
exactly.
do talk about a lot, which
Right.
is compatibility.
So we're on the same page.
Right.
But, you know, the thing to remember is, like we said earlier in this episode, is that this is something that is continuous for the rest of your life.
Yes. You can't, whatever you bring to her in the beginning, you can't stop.
Yeah.
You can't ever stop. If you get married, this is it. This is locked in. You know how you are going to romance her. By the way, I'm gonna put care or caring in here as an adjective. The definition:
Go.
Feeling and exhibiting kindness, concern, and empathy for others. The kindness or love one has for another individual or group. So we're talking about kindness and empathy, and it's a dynamic that we haven't really talked about in relationships yet. But the romance, the man bringing his romance game and the woman receiving his romance game produces the beginning of a dynamic, right? And so if a relationship starts to develop out of that, it's going to develop out of these things here about your kindness and your empathy with each other, and it has to be built. It's not just like, it's not a given and it's not a guarantee by any means. It has to be maintained, and even if it builds and you take care of it, and love starts to develop in a connection or whatever, and you continue with this feeling and exhibiting kindness and empathy, then a bond begins to form. And again, isn't what we said over and over and over again, that part of your responsibility for both the man and the woman in the relationship is continuing to deepen that bond, right? Strengthen that bond with each other, and with all of the different kinds of things that we talked about.
Okay.
So there you go.
Cool.
Be
Well,
romantic, men, and you women, enjoy it.
Bad Pennies. We'll be back.
See ya.